Mr. Kowalski, come on down, sir. We're going to re-swear you since it's been overnight. Ask the clerk to please swear you.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
All right. When we were talking yesterday, you were attempting to, I believe, leave on that Sunday the 9th. Is that right?
Yes.
I'd like to show you what's been marked in evidence as Exhibit 1001-0063. Permission of the court. It's in evidence. May I publish it?
If it's in evidence. I'm sorry?
It's a vote. Progress note. All right. If you would, please read down through particularly the second paragraph in the top half. And we're going to highlight a couple of phrases there. As you can see, the first sentence, and I then discussed with Michelle Smith, and did you understand Dr. Smith to be a doctor there at Johns Hopkins?
Yes.
Would be a discharge against medical advice, as we have not completed a wean of therapy and Dr. Sally Smith has not had the opportunity to evaluate the case. Do you see that?
Judge, I object to the leading, and again, this is reading of the medical records.
But I can't.
We're not reading medical records.
All right. Were you ever informed that there was a goal of keeping you there based on a statement that it would be AMA, when AMA is not a legal basis for keeping someone in Florida with in these circumstances?
Object to the leading. It also calls for a legal conclusion.
Yeah, I'm going to overrule those objections. You can answer that question.
I'm sorry, if you could repeat it.
Sure. Were you ever informed that the hospital had been considering ways of how to keep you there, you and your family there, simply on the allegation that leaving would be against medical advice?
Oh, we weren't.
Object to the leading and the speculative.
He just overruled that.
Overruled. You can answer.
Can you?
We were told if we left, we'd be arrested. So,
Did they let you know there that they had really no right to keep you?
they had no right at that time, no.
And your concern, if you left, would be, or tried to leave, what did you picture happening to you and your family?
I don't think we would have made it out the door
And why was that?
because we'd be arrested, like they said.
Now, down in the third from the bottom line there, it begins with "there is." Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
And so, at this point, the best of your knowledge, was there any Department of Family and Children legal obligation or reason to be able to hold you?
No.
Again, object to the reading of the medical record.
That question is allowable, but you might need to re-ask it, given that.
What, if anything, did they tell you about whether DCF could hold you there or not hold you there?
They didn't tell us anything.
Did you, of your independent knowledge, know anything about the law as to DCF holds or procedures?
Not at that time, no.
Looking down there, if you look at the next paragraph, beginning I spoke with, and if you go down about, looks like 6, 7, 8, beginning throughout the ongoing administration. Okay. And so, do you see, did Maya's pain remain the same during this period of time, or was Maya's pain increasing or decreasing?
Again, Judge, he's reading from the medical record. We'd just like a question to the witness and we would ask the medical record to be taken down.
From what you
Sustained, and let's take the medical record down at this point.
So did you believe at this point that you were being forced to keep your child in the hospital?
Absolutely.
And did you have concerns whether you yourself or your wife could stay at the hospital, would be forced to stay at the hospital?
Forced to stay? I didn't understand. That we would be forced to stay?
Or was it just simply the Maya?
Well, we wouldn't be able to leave without taking Maya. You know, they stated that we'd be arrested.
Okay. And so did it turn out then that you stayed with Maya that night, that Sunday night?
We had no choice.
And the next day, was there a treatment planned to begin to complete Maya's course of the ketamine program treatment?
Yeah, she had a scheduled appointment with Dr. Hanna in Clearwater.
All right. And so did there come a time when you met one of the doctors mentioned in here, Dr. Sally Smith, and if you could tell the jury the situation and what you saw in first meeting Dr. Smith?
The only time that I could recall meeting her was, I believe it was October 13th. I was in Maya's room. She was getting a clean out for a procedure for upper lower GI.
Where were you physically? Were you standing, sitting?
I was taking care of Maya. She was constantly had feces all over, so I was trying to clean her, trying to take her to the little portable commode. There was a
capable
nurse
of doing that on her own, or did she?
Absolutely not. No.
Go ahead.
There was a nurse in there, elderly woman. She was assisting me, giving me new washcloths, things like that, sheets for the bed. Then all of a sudden, she walked out, and in walked this woman. It was a woman, black hair, cigarette voice, and she didn't say anything. She's just looking at me while I'm overwhelmed trying to clean up Maya. And she just started asking questions, and the questions really were kind of weird. During that time, it didn't pertain to what I was doing. She's looking around the room.
Were there any introductions from the nurse?
No introductions. And I thought it was kind of rude, because here I'm overwhelmed trying to take care of Maya, and there was no help.
Was she wearing a Johns Hopkins? First, do you recognize what a Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital?
It's a lab coat.
And do you recognize the little signature that
They had the lab coat on, yes.
Can you tell the jury whether she was wearing that at the time?
Yes, there was a lab coat.
And what was your impression from the way that she was introduced or not introduced, and wearing that lab coat and starting to ask you questions? What role did you think she was in at that point?
She's a doctor or medical person within the hospital.
And so what happened after that? You were...
So it seemed like it was coordinated, because when the nurse walked out, the doctor walked in. Doctor left about 10 minutes, if that, and then in walked the nurse again. The nurse said, "You have to leave. Your daughter's under custody, protective custody."
All right. So this was on the 13th?
That was the 13th.
So from the time that you came in on the 7th through the 13th, did the state, to the best of your knowledge, or the hospital have any right to hold you there?
Objection calls for a legal conclusion.
Overruled on that one.
No. We have our right to go wherever we want.
And did you reinforce over that stay that you wanted your daughter out of there?
Many times.
And what was the response when you would say, "Look, we're leaving, we're out of here"?
I think there was a stall tactic at one time. They gave Beata some hope, and that never happened. But then, if you leave, you're arrested.
Did they talk about a transfer?
We were talking about Nemours.
And what was
That's
how
near
was
our-
it presented to you?
Well, I remember Beato for the longest time wanted it as well, and then I guess the hospital was also looking at Nemours to transfer to the Orlando area.
And what was the reason you wanted, other than just getting out of there, a transfer up to Nemours?
They treat CRPS.
And so then, were you and Beata presented with a transfer form?
Yes.
And what was it explained to you the reason would be why there would be a transfer to Nemours, verbally?
The reason was to go ahead and get her taken there. And the problem was, though, we found out by looking at the insurance codes, it wasn't for CRPS, it was for Munchausen by proxy. So we did not sign that form, because if we sign that form, we're admitting that we're.
So did the hospital ever tell you that, hey, we're going to send you over there, but we're going to start out with, in their mind, that there was child abuse going on?
No.
Okay, Madam Clerk says that the document actually is in evidence.
Certain pages that exhibit. Okay, you may continue, Mr. Anderson.
May we publish, Your Honor?
Absolutely.
3035-024. All right, now, a note, let me get it up here. All right. Is this, it's a two-page document, 024025. Do you recognize this, or did you ever actually see this?
It just came up.
Okay, sorry.
I did not. I'm sure, if anything, Beata did.
All right. And on this record, which is in evidence, as we said, does it appear that Munchausen by proxy is the diagnosis there? Muscle atrophy, bilateral lower extremity, right something?
Yes.
Munchausen by proxy. And who was it assigned by?
Yeah, I object to the predicate on this and the misconstruing the evidence.
Overruled.
Who was it assigned? Who assigned that? You see on right there, right after the Munchausen by proxy, assigned by,
And again, I object to him reading the medical record that he hasn't
just
seen.
directing the witness.
I'm sorry, I don't see where it's
Was
at.
Dr. Dees the doctor there that's shown to have assigned that diagnosis?
Same objection, Your Honor.
Overruled.
In the highlighted portion?
Yes.
Yeah. And to the best of your knowledge, Dr. Dees was not a psychologist or psychiatrist that there, was she?
I'm not aware of that.
And to the best of your knowledge, she never performed any type of psychological interview, did she?
Object to the leading.
Overruled. No, she wasn't diagnosed with Munchausen.
So this is on November 3rd. This was the form. Can you tell the jury whether the events leading up to this form began during this period of time that you were trying to leave between the 7th and the 13th?
Yes, it was.
And was this, to the best of your knowledge, the reason that they wanted you to continue to stay?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're being held there.
And did they also attempt to tell you that your daughter had to be weaned off of medications?
Yes, that was like the first thing
And
they stated.
And did you inform them that at no time had your daughter ever exhibited any type of withdrawal symptoms? First, are you familiar with what withdrawal symptoms are, gentlemen?
At no time we seen withdrawal syndromes for every procedure she went through, including the one in Mexico that was the longest one.
And did you inform them of that there was no danger of that?
We never seen anything.
Okay. And so, did you or Beata talk to the insurance company about the coding on these forms?
I called the insurance company.
And was this in connection with the care and treatment of your daughter?
That's correct.
And what did they tell you?
They gave me the codes and then what it was listed for.
And did that confirm in your mind what they were actually trying to transfer for?
Exactly.
So did you feel misled?
Extremely misled, yes.
Regardless of any of the other reasons, were you trying to get out of there during this period of time?
We wanted to get out, but we are not going to get out under those conditions.
Right. And if you had signed that agreeing to a Munchausen by proxy diagnosis.
You're admitting guilt or blame. So.
And what would happen to Beata's career as a nurse, if, to the best of your knowledge, if she admitted in a document to being the person behind the child abuse of Munchausen by proxy?
Objection, lack of foundation, speculation.
Overruled, you can answer.
She wouldn't have been able to do her job with that allegation against her.
And later, did you learn that had that allegation become stuck in Maya's record, medical records, what the
Yes,
effect would be on her?
It's still in there. And I mean, if something happens to Maya and there's nobody around to say what happened, she may not get the proper treatment because in her record it shows conversion disorder or fictitious disorder. Somebody could take that right away and think, oh, this girl's faking and not get the proper treatment. And that is disgusting that we have to live that way with that in her record.
All right. So how was it in terms of the stress on you and your wife, knowing, as you've just testified, that you needed to get your daughter out for treatment and you were being kept in, that she was being kept in?
It was extremely stressful. Extremely.
And what was the fear there in terms of Maya's condition as she lay there
The
without
fear
you?
was that she's going to deteriorate, which she did.
And so now I'd like to talk about, from what you saw, the times when you had to let Maya know that you couldn't leave. She could not leave that place.
The worst time I could remember is when I was told I had to leave. That was on the 13th. I looked at Maya, and she looked at me, and that is burned into my head, that picture. Having to leave your daughter that was in need of their parent. I wish it was like an Etch-a-Sketch where I could tip it over and erase that picture, but it's burned in my head forever. And I see that all the time. And I just wonder how she felt on the other side, seeing her dad walk away and not knowing if she's ever going to see us again.
Did you feel as though you'd betrayed her in some way?
No, I didn't betray her.
Did you feel a concern about her medical, what could happen to her medically without you and Beata there to guide her and to assist her and protect her?
I was worried about that, and I seen it deteriorate when I visited her.
All right, so
Not only did I see her deteriorate, I seen my wife. I go to the hospital, I see my child deteriorating. I go home, I see my wife deteriorating.
and in one event, did Beata in fact lose consciousness, fall to the floor upon finding out she wasn't going to be able
We
to see
had
her
a
child?
dependency hearing.
Don't tell us about the context. Just tell us, did that happen in an event?
Pardon me? I'm sorry.
Don't worry about the context where you
Okay.
were. Just
Yeah,
tell
she
us.
fell and struck her head on the floor.
And so through this period of time, as you were kept away from your daughter, can you tell the jury did Beata's condition remain the same from what you saw as a husband, or did it continue to deteriorate?
I was asked by Dr. Duncan, why is Beata so upset, and why can she not calm down? And I thought about that, and I remember, I'll say this real quick, but my nephew and I were fishing, and he accidentally caught a baby alligator. And he was reeling in, and the mother came out of the water and chased us on a picnic table. And I told Dr. Duncan, I said, that's Beata. Her child is on the 7th floor, and she wants her child back. And she realized, at that time.
And so as time went on, did Beata become accustomed to this, or did she continue to have these emotional, I guess, slide down?
It was all downhill.
And so I guess from that story, did Beata have a strong protective instinct, maternal instinct?
The strength was weakening. She's just losing hope.
Yep. Now, after this point, you find out that there had been a petition or whatever, and but you were granted visitation. Is that right?
I was.
And can you tell the jury whether this was just you being able to come and see your daughter, or whether you had to have someone with you?
It was arranged to be supervised visitation at first. I did take Kyle. I took Kyle with me the first time. That was on the 14th, I believe. And we drove from Venice to St. Pete to see Maya.
How often were you able to go?
Well, it was the drive there was an hour drive. And then when we got there, I called. And I spoke with the nurse. And the nurse said that it has to go through the social worker. So she said she'd call me back. And then I was talking with the social worker, and I was disconnected. I'm not blaming somebody for hanging up or anything.
Did you ever? Oh, sorry. Continue.
But we were denied that day to see Maya. So instead of getting mad or anything like that, bit my lip and drove home.
Was there a feeling on your part at that time that if you started to raise a lot of noise about it, for lack of a better term, it might get worse?
Objection, and we need to apologize, but we do need to approach on this, Your Honor.
Okay.
Objection overruled.
All right, so I think we're in a.
You're going to have to repeat it.
Go ahead, tell the jury.
I'm sorry, you're going to have to repeat the question.
Oh. Well, that's going to be interesting because I can't remember it. So I believe at this time then you were trying to see your daughter, and then
The first time I was denied, so we drove home.
So what happened the next time, or what happened next?
I spoke with Kathy Beatty, and she stated that they will not supervise the visitations. It has to be by a third party.
Now, so was she saying that they were bowing out of this?
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Denied by whom? Who is Kathy Beatty?
Kathy Beatty's social worker at the hospital.
From your view, was Kathy Beatty more or less assigned to your daughter?
She followed Maya from the first floor and up to the PICU, yes.
Was Maya kept in just one room when you would visit, or were there multiple rooms?
It was multiple rooms, but, it would be a certain time frame in a room.
And when you came up to those rooms, did you notice whether or not they would put Maya's name on the door?
No, there would be no marking on the door. Most of the children had their name on the door, next to the door, I'm sorry.
Artwork?
And it's a little slate or something like that. Most of them had their names on but Maya did not.
Ever
And
on any of them?
also, her name was not downstairs at the lobby if you're checking in. Her name was not there.
So if visitors came in to ask for Maya Kowalski, what happens?
She's not listed as a patient.
She became a non-entity? So tell us about after Ms. Beatty tells you they're not supervising anymore. How'd you manage to see or talk to your daughter?
We had to do a list of potential supervise or certain people, and never got anything back on that. But then it started out with a third party doing the supervised visitation on their schedule.
On their schedule?
Yes.
And were there times when you simply could not get in to see Maya?
Depending on the time, yeah, that's correct.
But throughout all of this, you were legally allowed to see Maya, were you not?
I was allowed.
Objection calls for a legal conclusion.
Sustained.
There was no prohibition, as far as you knew, on you seeing your daughter other than the practical.
Same objection, Your Honor.
That one he can answer.
I'm sorry.
There was no restriction on you seeing Maya other than the practical considerations of getting cooperation from the hospital.
Same objection, Your Honor.
Well, you changed the question, so I'm going to sustain that question.
All right. Let's just continue on. I'll come back to that.
Okay.
Tell the jury then about how you had to complete the list to get people in.
There was a list of family members, and then it was going to be, they'd do a background or whatever. I don't know what they were going to do with it, but I had to give them their name, address, social security number, everything. There was the only one that I know of for sure that's questioned was my brother Bobby. He questioned.
The same one that testified first?
Yes.
And was he a former police officer?
He was a former police officer.
Did they know
Turtle
that?
Springs. Yes.
So what happened?
They said they didn't want family members to do the supervise visitations.
Okay. So now, the list then, was it a list for visitors or was it just for supervised visitors?
That one was for just supervise, and then there was no list or they didn't state that we had to have a list for visitors. No visitors were allowed at that time,
All right, but that's important now.
other than the teachers.
All right, I want you to explain to the jury a little bit more about this. So there's a list for the supervised visitors that were going to supervise where you were, but in terms of people that just wanted to come see Maya, like Father, the priest that came in, or Father Jack, or
No, the immediate family, we had the list, and that was intended as well as for the supervised visitation, but there was
Anyone
now a list for just visitors.
and yet were other visitors turned away or told once they arrived in the room they had to go away?
Nobody could, if they went there to visit, she's not in the computer as a patient, so there would have been no way for them to go see her.
From what you saw, did Maya feel as though she was being isolated?
Oh, definitely.
So let me show you Exhibit 1081. I got it. Which is the 1081, and then we're going to go to 1082-0003, if we could. So that's 1082-0003. May we publish, Your Honor? It's in evidence.
It's in evidence, yes.
it took a long time, but one of her friends eventually did get the visit, one of her girlfriends.
And as we're pulling this up, her statement of rights, then your statement of rights, you were allowed visitation generally,
Yes,
and you were allowed to, for instance, practice cultural values and spiritual beliefs as long as they don't interfere with the well-being of others and are within the limits of hospital policy and the law. So was there anything that you, or to your knowledge, any of the visitors did that was disruptive?
Objection, lack of foundation, and misstates the evidence.
Overruled on that one.
anybody interfere with that visited? No.
Yeah, did the hospital, yeah, okay, that's what I'm getting at. From the best of your knowledge, did you or anyone else do anything that was against the hospital's rules?
No, we brought holy water. She had her wafers. She had her cross or the rosary, and a lot of that was not allowed to be in her room.
And so you brought it up, and was it then taken away?
It was taken away.
And did you ever learn the reason why it was taken away?
One thing that I remember is they were worried that the host was going to be poisoned.
That the body and blood was going to be
Yeah.
poisoned with what?
With what?
Yeah,
Who
what
knows?
was supposed to be in it? That was,
I have no clue what they were worried about.
well, did you ever learn through the course of this that they believed that somehow Beata was slipping ketamine to her daughter through the holy water and wafers?
Object, lack of foundation.
No.
Overruled.
They,
I know it didn't happen, but did you
it
learn?
didn't happen. No, it did not happen. But yes, they had all different ideas of
Theories?
theories, yes.
All right. And so, were you allowed by this rule to talk with another doctor or specialist to get a second opinion?
Objection, again, in terms of the time frame that this has been discussed.
Generally,
Well, I think Mr. Shapiro is correct. Are you talking about before or after the entry of the order?
this is after the entry of the order. Were they allowed to talk to another doctor?
I think you need to approach on that one.
There was a doctor that was under a court order to come evaluate Maya. And that was Dr. Hannah.
What happened there?
Dr. Hannah was refused to see her by Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital.
Now, in terms of the restrictions as you knew them, did you understand that you retained your rights to participate in, be involved in, and advise and consent in the medical treatment of your daughter?
We had rights. We still had rights at that time, yes.
And so through all of this, did the hospital, any of them, actually involve you in any of their decisions on
No.
treatment?
No.
So were you under the patient rights thing? Here we have the 1082003. It states, the third from the bottom of the first row, to be told by your healthcare provider. Do you see that?
To be told of medical choices for
Yes.
care of treatment.
Okay. And so were you ever allowed that right?
No.
And were you ever allowed during the period of time that you were there with Maya to consult with any doctor outside of the hospital doctors?
I'm sorry, repeat that.
Were you allowed ever to suggest or bring in were you allowed to suggest other doctors outside of Johns Hopkins to come in
We had
and get opinions?
Predicate and foundation.
Sustained.
What, if any, knowledge did you have about the terms and conditions of why Maya was in there? Did you understand that it included anything that restricted you from participating in the health care of your...
No,
And through the course of this, did you have the opportunity, or did you request the opportunity to bring in outside non-Johns Hopkins physicians to look at Maya and provide second opinions?
Yes, we,
Objection, foundation, predicate, and compound.
Sustained.
What, if any, doctors outside of Johns Hopkins got to see Maya? Was it
well,
Dr. Chopra?
Dr. Hannah was refused, and then Dr. Duncan, she was able to evaluate Maya when she went to the courthouse in Sarasota.
And then, and she testified here earlier.
Yes.
And then Dr. Chopra, was he allowed?
Dr. Chopra was after, that was in January. I went and seen, that was a court order as well. I had 48 hours to take Maya. I had to hire a nurse to go with, and I had to have a brother. And then I had a 48-hour time period. Otherwise, I'm in trouble if I'm not back in time.
And so tell us how you were treated on the times you could come in and visit by the staff, particularly Ms. Beatty.
Well, there's a time I walked in, the children were going to be visit with their lawyer. We had 4 lawyers, I believe. The children had a lawyer, Beata had a lawyer, I had a lawyer, and we had something else.
Was that by choice or by necessity?
So I brought the kids in to see their lawyer at the hospital. I walked in, and a woman behind the desk, she asked me, what am I doing there? And I said, I'm Jack Kowalski. I told her who I was and that the kids are going to visit with their lawyer. And she started screaming at me that I don't belong there, and she's going to call the police and whoever else because I don't belong there. And I said, I'm just here to drop the children off, or Kyle off. It's not like I'm going to pull up and tell Kyle to go inside the building and go see his lawyer. I had no intention of going upstairs with him, but to just get him to his lawyer. But she screamed at me, and I just walked out. Once again, I'm not going to cause any interference because I do not want to lose my privileges to see my child. That's the only basically the only one that could go see her at that time. Eventually, I found out who it was. The woman's name was Judy. After other visits, I seen her name tag. But there was another time during this whole time. There was supervised visitation. Then it was unsupervised for a while. Then they said Maya's condition's getting worse, and it's Dad's fault for visiting or interfering with her PT and things like that. So the court order changed so much, and all this information was from one side, the hospital. We had no say so that we weren't interfering. So yeah, there were so many interruptions. And then one time I got a new court order, I bring it in, and Elaine Brown, she's a social worker. I called and told her I was here because then now I have to check in with the supervisor again from the hospital. Mm-hmm. She came down finally, and she said I couldn't visit yet because she's unaware of the order, which I had in hand, and I provided her with it, the new order. She said that I could not go up there until it's reviewed by Kathy Beatty. I did have dresses for Maya for the holiday, so I asked her if she could give them to Maya. Later on, I found out those dresses never made it to her. They were in Kathy Beatty's office.
And you saw them there.
Yeah. So,
but hang on. You were giving things to the hospital staff to pass along to your daughter? Is that right?
Yes. Anytime we brought anything in, it had to go through them. They had to look through the bags. They had to check everything. Envelopes to whatever.
What about bringing in a snack for your daughter, like a brownie or?
I had to get permission of different food items. They had to be in a closed container. You couldn't bring in carrots or something Mom made. That was not allowed.
So she had to eat hospital food?
Hospital food and then some snacks that are in a closed container, in the original package.
From what you saw, was your daughter gaining weight or losing weight in the hospital?
She was losing weight. She was deteriorating, and at the end, she was puffy, like had a lot of fluids.
And so, were there any other times then that you had either gifts or something for Maya that was interfered with that you can think of?
Yes, well, there was an issue with her computer, the school computer. She wasn't allowed to keep it in her room, according from Kathy Beatty. Kathy Beatty stated that she may be going online to see some sex
Objection to
sites.
the hearsay,
Part of admission.
and also the motion.
Were these statements made to you?
She wrote the little note.
Well, to the extent that they need to be statements to him, so I think that question is sustained.
From your overall communication with Ms. Beatty, did it become clear to you that, let me see. All right. Let's move back then and get this right. I need to know more about the details of this dress incident. What was the purpose there? Was it just a gift of a dress?
No, there was a holiday coming up. I believe Christmas is when that happened.
And was the dress a Christmas dress?
It was a dress for the holiday, yes.
And were these things important to Maya?
It was important to Maya. It was important to Beata to have her celebrate.
Did you ever come in and expect to see your daughter in the dress and learn that she never received a dress?
Well, that was the way I found out. I asked Maya if she, how she liked the dress, and she looked at me like, "What dress?" So
And then what did you do?
then I contacted Elaine Brown, and she goes, "Oh, it's in Kathy Beatty's office. Found it in Kathy Beatty's office."
Did you confirm that?
The dress ended up getting to her eventually.
But you had to go around Miss Beatty.
Yes.
Did it appear that Miss Beatty was operating under some kind of plan in terms of the way you and your family were being treated?
Objection leading in speculation.
Sustained.
What, if any, plan did it appear that Miss Beatty was adhering to?
Same objection.
The plan, motive,
I'm
intent.
going to overrule the leading, but the other basis I'm going to sustain.
Which basis, Your Honor?
Speculation.
Yeah, thank you. And foundation as well.
Foundation.
Okay. So, was Miss Beatty's actions towards you, did they appear to be consistent with some idea?
She was in control. I remember an incident that happened to me, and I'm not talking for Maya or anybody else.
Objection to non-responsiveness. Your Honor.
Overruled. He can take the answer.
One day, she walked up to me and she asked me, "Did you ever consider divorcing your wife?" And it's like, "What are you talking about?" And she goes, "Oh, forget it," and walked away. And it's just like, why would you even come up and say something like that?
Now, the jury may hear testimony from your daughter about Miss Beatty's physical contact with her. During these conversations, was Maya ever allowed to tell you about those?
By a note.
And so, what was the effect on you and your wife about knowing what Miss Beatty was doing?
It was just putting a bigger wedge in between everyone, and more anger.
Well, was Beata becoming more desperate at this point?
Yes.
And what was her concern?
Number one, Maya's health.
And were you reporting back to your wife about her health every time you visited?
Yes, and yeah, it was difficult.
Well, when you came home then, was she nonchalant about what Beata was like, or was she desperate for information for what she was like?
She would want to know. Then she would want to know how she's being treated, but I wasn't getting the answers. There's many times I seen Maya in a position or in a situation where her lesions are hurting, the dystonia, and I brought that up, and there was no answers. There was one time they said they bring an ice pack for her lesions. The ice packs are lesions and pain. The ice packs are not going to help.
And we're going to refer to some covert video on this point in a moment, but going back to the dress, who picked out the dress for Maya?
Mom.
So what was the effect when she heard that Maya couldn't even get the dress?
I crushed her.
Did it appear to you that Miss Beatty was potentially a danger or a possible means of inflicting harm on your daughter?
Objection, speculation, predicate.
Overruled. He can answer that.
I was worried from what I seen in the notes.
What was your worry?
Well, I don't know if I could bring a certain thing up. So.
Okay. Well, let's approach sidebar and see if we can.
Mr. Anderson, you may continue.
Did there come a time that you began taking photographs of Maya and her different symptoms on your own?
Yes, within the hospital, yes.
All right. And why did you do that?
There was many times that we reported something and they denied or did not take care of, a lesion or her dystonia, things like that. So I started taking pictures. And then after reading some of the medical records don't even indicate that she has a lesion or so. And we have a picture on the same date where she has lesions.
Can we put up these photos, some of the photos, run through them?
Do you have an exhibit number there?
It doesn't have, I'm hoping you guys have the Kowalski photos.
Do you have an exhibit number?
That's what we're looking for right now. It's not on my outline. While we're finding those, what we're going to do is play the remaining two of these videos, if we
Okay.
could. One is 2703C. We can do that. Now, Maya pulling her knees up to her chest like that, what did that usually indicate to you?
Well, did you see her? She pulled her knees up, but did you see her use her hands to pull her legs up?
Yes.
And then also, I don't know if you noticed, she has a thing on her forehead. That's for the sensitivity of light. She has a little eye mask or something to cover her eyes if the light's bothering her. But when she got into the bed, I don't know if you've seen it or not, but she actually physically used her hand to lift up her legs.
Now, from your knowledge of CRPS, is light sensitivity one of the symptoms? Or
That is one.
Objection, predicate.
Overruled.
Sorry.
No, you can finish your answer, sir.
Yes, it is.
All right, let's play 2703D.
Now I'm supposed to be like $1, right? Or like really cheap.
$1.
Yeah.
Like normally the more shopping for that, the cheaper.
Oh, really?
Then she has your medicine, which should be helping a little bit. I want to try to use the walker, just to stand, pivot, get in the chair, like you did with Beth the other day. So I'm jealous that she got to see it and I did not. So I'm going to help you, but I want you to try to get your feet flat on the ground. I'll hold you up, just see your feet flat. Put your feet down.
Good job. Good job.
Turn the walker.
You got it.
Better than yesterday. Hey, give me a high five. That was awesome. Better than yesterday.
You got it.
I wish we had the feet video. That was awesome. Great job.
It's going to hurt just a little bit because you haven't put any weight on the leg in a long time.
Were you able to hear her moaning and crying?
Yes.
Is that similar to what you heard previously when your daughter was in significant pain?
Yes, and sometimes it could be worse. But as you could see, she was trying to use her arms as much as possible. That's not a child faking.
And does this demonstrate, based on your knowledge of your daughter and the times you were seeing her at this time, the type of shape she was in?
She was getting worse.
As she entered the hospital, was she almost to the point of getting up on a walker and maybe with just a tiny bit of assistance getting around before the relapse?
Yeah, before the relapse, she was outstanding. Upper body strength was extremely well. And like I stated earlier, there was a picture where she's actually using her arms to support her whole body off the ground. She looked like a little gymnast. But no, now we just see her going downhill again.
Did Maya report to you during this period of time that this physical therapy, as opposed to warm water therapy, was actually hurting her?
There was no warm water therapy here at the hospital.
So was this therapy painful for her?
Yes.
And she
And
expressed
it's
that?
usually not, that don't appear to be the proper therapy for CRPS.
What's wrong with it?
It's too quick. You got to do things at a certain pace. I don't know if Rachel explained that from agility. You have to, first of all, build up certain things. And I believe the young lady from Tampa General, she also stated that you gotta do it in steps.
Okay, so let's then jump to the photographs that you took that we alluded to just a moment ago. And I believe after October 20th, Nick has reminded me, after October 20th, when you witnessed or when you visited, did anyone tell you at the hospital about the video, that is, the one that had just completed, about Maya's difficulties in the surveillance room?
Not at the hospital, no.
And had you had that complete video, would you have used it to demonstrate that your daughter actually was doing a lot worse than being represented?
This would have helped paint the picture to the judge.
Sustained.
I'm sorry.
Was that video of value to you in defending your family?
Objection calls for speculation now.
Sustained.
What, if any, use would you have made of the information had they told you about this video?
Same objection. Your Honor.
It's not speculation.
Okay, you can answer that question.
We would have took this video to prove Maya's condition. They were, unfortunately, it was a one-sided story. And we had no, if we had this would have painted a better picture to the judge at that time. And we probably wouldn't be here today.
So let's go through the lesion photos if we can. 2571-001. And after each one, I'll ask you to just kind of tell the jury what they're already seeing.
Your Honor, I apologize.
Approach.